What's up, YouTube? So in today's video, we're going to talk about the 5 things I wish I knew when I first started programming. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button below. Also hit the like button, hit the notification bell so you guys know when I upload videos. I upload videos also, if you didn't know, every Tuesday and Thursday, so expect new content then. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the video. So the first thing I'll say I wish I knew when I first started programming was to learn one language at a time. I feel like in too many instances, especially even in school, like they push the fact of you trying to learn multiple languages. Why, I'm not totally sure. I feel as though when you first start learning how to code, you really need to focus on one language and try to see if you can master that language first. Once you've mastered that language, then you can move on to other languages. But the biggest reason why I feel as though you should master one language is because that one language, if you seriously learn and master that language and learn all the concepts around the language, as well as how this language works underneath the hood, it'll help you tremendously when you start going into wanting to learn other languages. So for me, for instance, I'm an iOS engineer, for those who don't know. So I went into the mindset of learning Swift. I had already learned other languages from college, as far as Java, Python, C#. And then when I started working, I ended up also learning JavaScript. I ended up learning Code Fusion, HTML, CSS, MySQL. But that's not a language, but I learned MySQL. I also learned C when I was in college. But it wasn't truly that I sat down and like fully embedded myself in trying to learn Swift that it finally, it's like everything clicked. I understood the language in and out, understood how it worked underneath the hood. Even when I went back and I tried to go and learn Objective-C, it was so much smoother. I understood what was the differences between one language versus another, what was the pros of one language versus another. Just the fact that, you know, something like Python, you have a lot of different helper methods already added into the language, so you can do a lot of cool things with that language. Versus something such as like Objective-C, you have pointers that you're working with, so it's very easy to know where something is, especially if you're doing like data structures and algorithms or different things like that, and you're solving these problems in Objective-C. It's much easier to me personally in Objective-C versus Swift, although I like Swift so much more, but that's beside the point. But the biggest thing is, man, make sure you learn one language at a time. Don't try to find yourself, jumping from one language to another just because you want to say you know a whole lot of languages. You want to make sure you master one language completely. And once you've mastered that language and you understand how it works and you know how to use it to build out applications, then at that point, it's good to go ahead and learn a different language. So the next thing I say is make sure you do not compare yourself to somebody else. I know me personally, I did this a lot. When I first got into software development and I wanted to become a software engineer, I started working and I felt like I was almost like a failure. Primarily because the people who were around me were like phenomenal. And granted, they only had like 3 years of experience. So I was like, man, I just graduated and you guys are like light years ahead of me. Like, what the heck, But I had to take a step back, understand that, we all come from different schools, we have different backgrounds. Some people, they touched programming when they was in high school. Some people learned it when they was a kid, like 6, 7, 8 years old. Some people, they just easily pick up the language with no problem. But for me, I didn't feel like I struggled with the language or any language in particular, but I feel like with programming, it was hard for me to fully understand some of those concepts, especially like classes, structs, enums, and different things like that. It was just hard to wrap my mind around those type of things. I understood what they did, but knowing when to use one thing versus another, it took me a while to finally have a clear understanding of how I should use something, when I should use something, and best practices. Honestly, for me, it wasn't until I started working on projects on my own, in my own spare time, that I started to see the reasons in which why you do one thing versus another. And I had to understand that I couldn't compare where I was in life as far as a programmer to somebody else. And as I got better over the years, I've run into a ton of engineers who they may look at me and say like, man, Kenny, this, and this. You know how backend work, front end work, middleware. You know how to build out your own API. You understand Swift. You also understand Java. You also understand Kotlin. You understand Android development. But the thing is, again, you can't compare yourself to somebody else because for me, I have a lot of experience in a ton of different things because I've worked on a ton of different projects. So it makes sense. Whereas if you're very much so new to this, yeah, you may only know one language. That's totally fine. Take that one language, learn it to the best of your abilities, build some applications with that one language, and then from there, slowly migrate over into a different language and see what you can explore with that language. Being able to pick up one language versus another should be easy. It shouldn't be something that's extremely hard to pick up a different language. Only thing that's honestly changing underneath the hood is really just the syntax. Outside it, most languages pretty much operate in the same manner for the most part. So again, just don't compare yourself to somebody else. No matter if someone has a 4.0, they're going to be graduating college and, getting a job at Google or Amazon, and you're not there yet. Don't sweat that, because that was definitely me. I graduated with not an extremely high GPA, but I worked hard, I studied, I worked on projects on the side, and eventually I got to the point where, hey, Google was calling me, but that's another story for another day. But again, just make sure you practice on your own, take the time to learn the things that you need to, and you should be good from there. So the other thing I'll say that I wish somebody told me, or I wish I knew rather, was the fact that I wish I knew to explore other stacks. And what I mean by that, I mean just explore other avenues of programming. Because when I was in college, honestly, the only thing I really knew was web development. I didn't know anything else. I did know about game development, but as far as I've been told at the time was game development was extremely hard, as well as it was a lane in which not many people could get through. If you wanted to become a game developer, it was pretty much like, yeah, see how that works. Because everybody wanted to work on Call of Duty, everybody wanted to work on Halo, all the big name games. Me and all my friends wanted to work on those, but I mean, just being completely honest with you, I don't know not one person that works on any of that stuff. And as far as I've heard, the people who do work on those projects, they work crazy hours, they're stressed out, it's nowhere in comparison to if you worked at a company like Apple or Google or Netflix or something like that. I wish I had known about more stacks, because I would have been able to explore other avenues that I may want them to get into. Because for me, I love mobile development. So because I love mobile development, and that's the lane I ended up going into, I could have decided that could have been the lane I wanted to do in college, versus in college, me going deep into learning web development, then getting a job as a web developer or a full stack engineer. And then from there, making a decision to say, you know what, I honestly don't even like this. I almost wanted to kind of get out of programming because I just didn't like what I was doing. Then I found out about mobile development. I was like, okay, this is the lane I want to be in. I actually love coding like this. Versus being full stack, I was like, I don't really like HTML. I don't care for CSS. JavaScript was an okay language for me at the time. I like it a lot more now, but at the time I was like, this is okay. I didn't really care to work with databases like that. That wasn't my niche. So I say explore different areas of whatever programming language or programming stack you want to go into, whether that's front end, back end, middleware. If you want to work on mobile, you want to do game development, heck, now you got the blockchain that's out now, and there's a ton of other different lanes you can go into. So explore everything, see what you like the most, and then from there, sky's the limit. So the fourth tip I have for you is make sure you go out and try to find yourself a mentor. So for me, it was hard to find a mentor. Still to this day, I really don't have a mentor. Kind of wish I did, but I ended up just learning a lot of things on my own. But I feel like if you find a mentor, or at least someone who's much better than you are, that's going to help kick your skills to the next level. You want to find someone that can give you honest feedback. If your code is trash, your code is just trash, and there's no harm in that, by no means. I've had trash code that I've put up for PRs before, and I've had people just be like, yo, bro, what is this? But it's a great conversation piece. It's a good way to learn, because someone can give you honest feedback around what you're doing, what you shouldn't be doing. They can give you material that you can go to and learn from. So try to see if you can find a mentor. It's the best thing in the world if you can find one. I know nowadays, some developers or some engineers don't really want to mentor others, but if you can find somebody who seriously wants to sit down, mentor you, give you the playbook on things you need to do to get from, say, knowing absolutely nothing to becoming a principal engineer, then that's, everything. But definitely go find yourself a mentor. And the last thing I'll say, this may be pretty controversial, but this is my personal opinion. Please don't shoot the messenger. But if you get into programming or you want to become a software engineer, please don't do this just because you want the money. Some people decide they want to become a software engineer because software engineers make good money. That is absolutely true. And I get it that, for some people, if you're in a situation where, times are hard, and which I know it is for a lot of people right now, you just thinking to yourself like, man, I'm gonna become a software engineer, try to get to these 6 figures, and then I'll be good. But it's way more to it than that. As a software engineer, you're continuously learning. That's number one. Number two, I think software engineering right now is glamorized a lot, which, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of perks, but at the same time, there are those times in which it is stressful. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and just make it seem like it's just peachy every single day. It's not. If something goes down in production and you're on call, like, you have to get that issue resolved. Like, it's not a situation in which you can sit there and just decide like, oh, well, I'll get to it. Like, no, the company is either losing money or customers are upset about something. And this is something serious, this is why you're paid high dollar, because they need you to resolve an issue, not to take your time to fix an issue or think that, well, I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to not worry about it. Like, no. So being a software engineer, it has its pros and cons to it. There are plenty of times where I've been in a situation whereas someone comes to me and say like, hey, we need this feature done by X amount of time. Can you do this? We need this, within 2 months. And as a software engineer, your job is to evaluate the situation, come up with a plan on how long it should take you to get this issue either resolved or feature knocked out. Then from there, you go to your project manager, let them know. And from that point, it's your job to get that issue or feature taken care of in a timely manner so it can go through the process of being reviewed, then going through testing, and then from there being handed out to the public where people can actually either use that feature or that feature is now fixed or bug is now fixed. So being a software engineer, it has its pros and cons to it. But the biggest thing is, do this because you actually love it. Because again, you're going to spend hours upon hours sitting at a computer trying to figure out how to resolve a problem, scratching your head, and sometimes you don't even come up with a solution. There have been days that I've had where I've literally sat there for about 5, 6, 7 hours, sometimes an entire day, and I didn't write a lick of code. I just kept researching or trying to figure out a better way of solving an issue that we either had currently going on in the application, or trying to figure out a better solution to what we already have. Just because sometimes, I ain't gonna say sometimes, but in a lot of cases, the first solution is probably not the best one. So sometimes you wanna take a step back and look and see, is there a better solution which you can use? And if you do that, that may take time. So again, if you're gonna become a software engineer, my personal opinion, don't solely do this for the money. Do it because you love the code, because you're gonna have to code outside of work sometimes. You're going to spend time learning. And if you already hate what you're doing, you're not gonna be a software engineer long. I know many people that want to do it just for the money. Once they got into it, they're like, man, this is not easy. I'm like, yeah, I tried to warn you about that. So do it because you love it. And if you do it because you love it, it's gonna, like my dad told me once before, if you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And so far, I have to say, it feels like that. I love software engineering. I love writing code. So I don't feel like I really had to work much. It's crazy as it sounds. But that's that. So I want to thank you guys for watching the video. If you like the content I brought you, make sure you hit the like button. Also subscribe below. And with that being said, I just want to thank you guys again, and I'll see you in the next video.